Hello, my name is Tanya Hobbs, and I will be doing a book review on Teaching Toward Freedom, Moral Commitment and Ethical Action in the Classroom by William Ayers. Just a little bit about William Ayers. He's a distinguished professor at the University of Illinois in Chicago. He actually is retired. He's also an author and an education activist. He also founded Small Schools Workshop and Center for Youth and Society. He also seems to be a pretty cool guy. He has the earrings and the kind of messy hair. So that was kind of appealing to me when I first saw this photo. I knew he was going to be a cool guy. Um, just um, reading this book and following along. I determined that he follows the progressivism philosophy as far as education goes. He's focused on the whole child and educating the whole child, as in embracing everything about each student, their culture, their beliefs, and encouraging freedom in the classroom. So, all of that, I just gathered that he was a progressive educator. And just to add to that about this book, Ayers digs into the hope and the conflict of education and how it can be used in an authoritarian manner, or how he envisions it as a way for students to become more fully human, engaged, and more free. So as I read this book, um, I noticed that he used the words or different variations of the word human frequently. He also used the word free and freedom quite frequently throughout the entire book. And that also led me to believe that he was a progressive educator. In this book, he also uses examples of his own classroom experiences, examples of pop culture, film, novels, and various poems. Um, and I really enjoy that. That made the book really interesting to me. It kind of I was able to make real life connections by him using those examples. And one personal example that I really liked that stood out to me was while visiting um, a high school in Chicago. There was this dress code policy in place: no baggy jeans, no dangerous jewelry, whatever that means, no piercings beyond the face, and other policies that really didn't do anything um, to promote young people finding their place in the world. And Ayers felt that that was petty, and it was focusing on the small picture rather than the larger picture. And it was more of discipline and conformity. And that causes, in my opinion, oppositional identities that we spoke about briefly in class. It can easily cause students to resent their teachers and not be receptive to what their teachers are trying to teach them, just because they feel out of place, and maybe they're feeling like they don't belong. So I really connected with that in the beginning when I read that. So that's just a little bit about the book that I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and get into my review quickly because my time is running out. So he opens with the question, what is teaching for? He gives an example. Um, he describes teaching as an enterprise that helps human beings reach the full measure of their humanity. And on the other side, he describes schooling as the practice of dehumanization and unfreedom. And one example that he gives from Philip Noyce's Rabbit Proof Fence, that is about Native American children being schooled. And in the process of being schooled, um, they're being taught and they're being taught to be white, I guess. He described it as breathing whiteness into them. And breathing whiteness into them destroys their identity. It strips away who they truly are, and it strips away their culture. But at the time, it was said to be for their own good. And I totally agree with Ayers here when he says that it's not for their own good. It's not going to push them to be the best humans that they can be. They're conforming to something else and they're totally losing themselves. So it's important as educators that we embrace each student wherever they are in life and whoever they are and wherever they come from and let them know that we support them. Um, and he also gives a humanistic teacher's message. What a humanistic teacher's message should be. He says, you can change your life and you must. You can transform your world if you will. So I I kind of interpreted that as you have the control, but I'm going to support you. Um, you can transform your world. You can transform how you progress in the world, how far you go, but you have to do it. But as an educator, I'm going to be here to support you 100%. Next thing he talks about is turning toward the student. Um, he says that education is an enterprise dedicated to truth and enlightenment, liberation, and freedom, or education can be bent towards dehumanization. And here he gives an example of Malcolm X. Malcolm X, at the time when he was a small child, he was viewed as a thing and not as a human. He was called names, um, and he was in a predominantly white school, so he was not accepted. Um, and as a result of not being accepted and feeling out of place, he dropped out of school, he got into trouble, and he was only trying to find his way and his place in the world. But Ayers says, as educators, we can prevent this by simply standing with our students and not above our students. And I found that to be really profound because a lot of times as educators, we're like, you're going to do what I said do because I said it, and this is how it's supposed to be done, instead of standing with our students to see what we need and or I'm sorry, what they need and how we can support them in those needs. He also says sharing in their predicaments. If Malcolm X would have had a teacher that shared his feelings and knew exactly how he felt, Malcolm X was a very intelligent young man, and if that had been nurtured, um, the way it should have been, maybe he would have taken a different route as far as getting in trouble and dropping out of school and spending time in jail. He just needed maybe a teacher to nurture him and not to encourage other students to make him feel out of place and giving him that support that he needs. Also, he says that as educators, we should look beyond deficits or assets. And that is so important because a lot of times, for example, I actually worked with a teacher that, she was kind of like, oh, this student, his parents are doctors. So, I've got to put him up here because his parents don't play. That's exactly what she said. His parents don't play. So she kind of put him above the other students because of um, the his parents place in society versus another student whose parents may work in Kroger or be in the fast food industry. She kind of placed him above. So we need to look beyond deficits and assets when we are dealing with teachers, when we're dealing with our students. And also, I want to add, we need to look beyond skin color. Unfortunately, I know this is kind of a uncomfortable subject to talk about, but we need to look past skin color. We need to look at each student the same. We need to offer each student the same opportunity when it comes to education, or when it comes to just freedom in the classroom, period, as a whole. Next, he talks about building a republic of many voices. Um, he gives a few commitments that teachers teaching toward freedom should commit to. The first one is take the side of the student. As far as education goes, with support in the classroom, being who they are, pushing them towards being their best person. The next commitment is creating a space where a republic of many voices come to life. And that just means in your classroom, create that space for everyone to have a voice, regardless of their background, regardless of their um, economic status, regardless of any deficits that they may have, regardless of what they look like, regardless of where they come from. Your classroom or my classroom should be a space of a republic where I hear and value the voices and opinions of each of my students, regardless to any sexual orientation, regardless to race, regardless um, to appearance. My space in my classroom will be a place where my students can come to life, and they can give um, they can speak their opinion, they can speak their feelings, and feel comfortable doing so. The next commitment is to build an environment where students can face one another without wearing masks. And no, he's not talking about our face covering that we are having to wear right now because of COVID-19. He is talking about students just being able to be who they are, face other students that don't look like them, speak their truths, speak their opinions, and everyone feel comfortable. Lifting the weight of the world, encouraging and supporting students, being an activist. Teachers should be an activist. Mostly that's what this chapter was talking about, being an activist for students. And he ends with, what are my choices? To look and to see, to stand up and be counted, to dream, to listen, to accept disequilibrium, to act, to doubt, and to act again. And to me, that is for both educators and students alike. Next, he talks about standing with students as they see and begin to feel the weight of the world for themselves. Um, just standing with your students and teaching them and letting them know that you're there to support them. And lastly, teaching toward freedom again. He says that educators um, act sometimes as mentor and guide, as ally or witness, and always as student of our students. And to me, that is so important. Acting as a student of our students, meaning that we are going to learn from our students, learn who they are, learn what they need, learn them as individuals, and learn them as human beings, and learn what they need from us as educators. Final notes: teaching toward freedom is never finished, but it's a stance and a commitment in the world. And you should always see yourself the same as the student, a work in progress. So, again, I really enjoyed this book. I learned a lot from it. Teaching Toward Freedom has opened my eyes and understanding to so much more. I totally agree with his concepts, his theories. I see myself as a progressive educator, and I've learned so much from him. I hope you've enjoyed this book review, and I encourage you all to go out and read this book by William Ayers. Thank you.